Warren Buffett entered into a risk arbitrage a few months ago and has continued to buy more and more shares of this. The risk arbitrage is Microsoft's purchase of Activision as a whole. And the issue that's coming up right now is that UK regulators are questioning if this will reduce the competitiveness of the gaming industry as a whole. And Microsoft actually pushed back on those concerns. That's what I want to cover in this video today. But first, let me run the intro. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So I want to dive right into this one. You can see that there was an article that was put out on the 1st of September which said that Microsoft is pleading for its Activision Blizzard deal as UK regulators are signaling an in-depth review. And so what exactly is happening, guys? So you can see that the UK CMA says that it was concerned that Microsoft's anticipated purchase of Activision Blizzard could substantially lessen competition in gaming consoles, multi-game subscription services, and cloud gaming services. And so what exactly do they mean by that? Well, I believe what they're suggesting is that after this purchase goes through, the UK regulators are concerned that Activision may not necessarily release their video games on all platforms. And so you will have to use Microsoft-based platforms in order to play these games like Call of Duty. Now, Microsoft did come out originally and say that this will never be the case. I just don't think it makes good business sense either. You have gamers that have Xboxes and you have gamers that have PlayStations, and why wouldn't you want to sell your game to all of them? It just doesn't make sense. I understand that it would increase purchasing of some consoles because people really like Call of Duty, but all it will inevitably end up doing is open the door for competition for a Call of Duty type title that will list on both platforms. So I just don't see this working out from an overall business strategy perspective. It costs a lot of money to make these games, so it just doesn't make sense. And I believe that Microsoft agrees with me, because you can see that Microsoft actually issued a press release to address the UK regulators' concern. They said that, as we've said before, we are committed to making the same version of Call of Duty available on PlayStation on the same day the game launches elsewhere. As we extend our gaming storefront across new devices and platforms, we will make sure that we do so in a manner that protects the ability of developers to choose how to distribute their games. So in other words, it just doesn't look like that's in the cards for Microsoft, and I just don't see why it would be. And here's a tweet from Tom Warren, who's a respected journalist that covers PC and the console business, and actually he says on his Twitter bio that he covers Microsoft everything. So I would suggest that he's somewhat of an expert. And he's saying that Microsoft is still planning to close this transaction in 2023, and the UK CMA is expected to enter phase 2 this week. So he expects it to close, but not for a while yet. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't expect it to close in 2023. So we'll see how this plays out. But I think the best bet in this situation is, if you're going to play this arbitrage opportunity or risk arbitrage opportunity, the best bet is just to purchase the shares. And that flies in the face of how I've played this. I've used sort of like an option strategy, but the strategy that I've utilized allows me to sort of purchase shares if this goes further than 2024. So I'm okay, but if I enter into this opportunity further, which I do expect myself to do, I'm going to just be buying the shares flat out. Now recall, guys, that Microsoft announced that they were going to buy Activision Blizzard for $95 a share in an all-cash transaction. And so what does that mean from a risk arbitrage perspective? Well, you can see that the shares have largely stuck to around $78-80 a share. So there's an approximate 21% discount to the transaction price, as investors do believe that there's regulatory risk for this transaction to go through. I don't think that there's that much regulatory risk despite what the UK regulators are saying. I actually don't even think that the US regulators have a leg to stand on, but everyone's scared of Nina. And if you watch that video that I put out on this opportunity previously, you know exactly who Nina is. And notice that this risk arbitrage opportunity is becoming crowded by value investors. So you have Warren Buffett, who's really jumping into it, And Prem Watsa, who's been described as the Canadian Warren Buffett, has been buying into it as well. But the question is, what happens if this opportunity doesn't go forward? What is the downside here? Well, you can see, here's how I'm forecasting out this company. I'm expecting revenues to grow at approximately 6% a year with very high gross profit margins, which is typical for this industry. And before I get into the valuation, I just want to point out, guys, that 80% of the watch time on this channel is from people who are not subscribed. So guys, please hit that subscribe button for great content. Now, going right into their valuation, you can see that I'm using a terminal multiple of 17.5 times earnings, which might actually be low. I would be inclined to use a multiple of around 20 times earnings, but just to prove the point here that just with that multiple of 17.5 times earnings, I'm valuing this company at around $76 per share. The current share price is around there, so it's being appropriately valued, which means that the current share price reflects 25.1 times next year's earnings. And so there is some downside here, because you could see that if the deal doesn't close, some investors might sell it off. But effectively what I'm saying is that at $78 per share, I think the company is fairly valued. So I don't see a ton of downside. There might be some initial downside if the deal gets canceled, but I think the shares will come back to around that $78 per share level. Now, if you want to get access to that Activision model and all other models that the Patreons get access to, you can get access to that at the lower tier of the Patreon. And if you want to join us at the end of the month, every month, for a live epic presentation on the best opportunities that exist in the market, you can join us at that higher tier. I know a lot of you guys do not like Activision as a company, but they do make money. So that's kind of how I think about this. But if you guys are not familiar with this opportunity, I made a whole video on this, which you can actually get to right here.